All right, so we are officially live.
Hello.
We are going to check to make sure everybody can hear us. I see some of you guys are in the chat. You are waiting. Just want to make sure we get all the technical stuff figured
Totally. I can hear
out.
you. Can you hear me?
Yes, if you guys can give us a thumbs up. Or like a yes, you can hear us. And we are also going to be streaming. We're streaming Laura with foster parenting, myself, Whitney, Be the Village. I hope you guys know me if you're on my channel. We're also going to be streaming on Instagram. So we're going to get that set up. So hold tight.
Can I go ahead and start it?
Go for it.
So you're going to all hear me start talking to Instagram. It's very high tech. All right. Mine is... All right. Okay, so we are live on Instagram and live on YouTube. I'm Laura. I'm going to be talking with Whitney from Be the Village, and I'm going to... You got to mute me on one of them.
I did, yeah.
So in just a minute, I'm going to add her in to the Instagram, and then we'll be ready to go. So Whitney, I see you there, but can you request to join?
I'm pressing the button.
Okay, let me do this as well.
It's not letting me. Hold tight, everybody. Oh, here we go.
All right. Hello.
Gotta lower that again. Awesome. We're doing this. We're like,
oh my goodness.
YouTube,
okay.
Instagram.
I just want to make sure that no one's having an echo on either. So how does everyone sound on Instagram and YouTube? This is very exciting for millennials.
We were like, we'll figure it out. It's not going to be an issue at all.
Thank you everyone for joining. Okay. So Whitney, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. So thank you all for being here, whether you are on YouTube, whether you are on Instagram. We're going to be trying to manage the chat on both. If you have questions, we're kind of doing like a little bit of an open forum. We've gotten some questions through my Instagram, through your Instagram, and of course, feel free to drop questions in the chat. So I want Laura to introduce herself to everybody on YouTube who may not be familiar with you. Your Instagram and TikTok following are like huge. You're like epic on there. So
I don't know. It's all kind of strange on the internet. I'm Laura. So you can find me at foster.parenting. I'm also on TikTok. And I am a licensed foster parent in California. And we provide therapeutic foster care. And I typically foster younger kids, like 0 to 8. But I create content that's kind of trauma informed for all ages. And excited to, and I don't have any on the home. So that's like one difference with me and Whitney as well, is I only foster, I don't have bio kids.
Yeah. So that is something, it kind of glitched on me for a second, but yeah, so Laura doesn't have any kids at home outside of kids that are being fostered. And so that's one of the things that kind of differentiates us. So I know she has questions from her Instagram followers specifically about that, because for me, I'm Whitney. You know me from Be the Village. I feel like Laura's not giving herself enough credit. Like her content and her resources that she puts together are like incredible. I mean, just super, super helpful for anyone interested or just looking to get more information on it. So yeah, I'm in Ohio. I am a foster parent. Trying to switch the language a little bit to foster caregiver.
I like that.
Something I'll talk a little bit about if we get the chance. We started, my husband and I, we started our fostering journey when Darcy was like 2 years old. She's our oldest. And I think like when we decided to foster, she was 2, like a year and a half or 2 years old. And now she's 6 years old. We also have Sawyer, who is 3 now. And all he knows is us being a foster family. So very interesting. Yeah. Very interesting dynamic that we have. And I know some of the questions will get to that. So awesome. And I'm going to try, I'm worried to like touch my Instagram and like scroll, because
you're good.
Last time I did this, it like cut everything out. So I'm not going to touch it.
I just got a screen time alert. I've spent too much time on social media already today. Sorry about that.
I think you're allowed.
Yeah. Okay. So some of the questions at mine, especially about bio kids, is again, when did you start? Like, how old were your kids? Which you already touched on. Yeah. But like, can you talk a little bit about how you prepared? I mean, obviously they're little ones, but I still think that preparation is important. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I guess when it came to Darcy, to be fair, she was too young to really say if it was okay or not.
Mhm.
And just like any parents, we were making the best decision that we could at the time with the information that we had. We definitely started, we've learned so much along the way, but like initially, we knew that we were going to be fostering kids who were older than her. We played into all the stigmas that I speak against now
Mhm.
as a advocate. And we were nervous. We were nervous about having teens in our home and how would we protect Darcy, like all those conversations like we had.
Mhm.
So I definitely empathize with families who are going through that, and that's where they're at. What we found is that every teen and every child that has been through our home, incredibly kind and caring kids, and the bond that they have with our kids is incredible to watch and witness. So when we started out, yeah, Darcy wasn't old enough to give really consent to
Yeah.
allow it. We made sure that rooms were not shared. And
Yeah.
as she
Okay.
got older, and now that she's old enough to really vocalize like how she feels, like we ask her and we tell her like, "Hey, are you ready for us to have kids come stay with us for a while?" And it's really important to speak like their language. Don't use super big terms. But yeah, she knows what our family does. And, even just recently when we asked her, hey, are you okay if kids come
Mhm.
to stay with us? She's all for it. She's like, yeah, you mean like, and then she'll say names of past kids and she's like,
Okay.
like they stayed with us. And I was like, yeah, exactly. That's what would happen. So that's how we kind of communicate with her.
Do you ever, because this is a question and I'm curious too, do you ever share like what's going on with the foster child, or like
Mm,
how do you keep sensitivities and like confidentiality? Like how do you navigate that
yeah.
at the dinner table? I feel like it would be a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, so I guess, when we have kids staying with us, those kind of like trauma conversations are
Mhm.
really more one-on-one,
Okay.
and we make sure that Darcy and Sawyer are occupied when caseworkers are visiting. Like, this is definitely a time to, like, use screen time. Like,
Yeah.
we'll throw them in the basement. Our basement is a full, like, play area. It's got a TV, and we're
Oh, to
like
be in Ohio.
I
We
with
used to have a
basements.
basement. Oh man.
Yeah, yeah, so it definitely like, we have that privilege of having that separate space where they can go and they can occupy themselves.
Okay.
Caseworkers are really cognizant of, like, when kids are coming in and out, and they'll kind of pause the conversation. So,
Oh,
really,
that's
they
good.
those conversations happen one-on-one, and we haven't had an incident where there was, well, there was with our emergency placement that failed. We have a video talking about that,
Mhm.
where we said yes to a placement and kind of things happened and we realized we couldn't support that child, um, based on the behaviors that were being exhibited. And Darcy was curious, like, she was
Mhm.
trying to figure out like what's going on. And we did have a conversation with her after, so she knew, what was really going on, behind those behaviors.
Yeah. Carmen Maria had popped in and asked if your daughter had ever said no. Like when you asked, "Are you ready to bring in kids again?" Has she
Yeah.
ever said no?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's something that, we're waiting for. Um,
Mhm.
and, if she does say no, like, we would respect that, but we would also be really curious as far as like what's underneath that no. Is
Mhm.
it that she is feeling like she's having to share time? Is she worried about her space and her things? So it really would like open up a conversation again. I mean, she just turned 6, so the
Yeah.
conversation looks a little bit different. But yeah,
Mhm.
good question.
Yeah. Do you wanna get one from your list? You've
Yeah,
answered a
yeah.
bunch from my followers.
Yeah, let me pull it up. So this is one that I feel like I get a lot,
Mhm.
and it is how to cope with reunification when you don't agree or believe that it's safe.
Mhm.
And this is something I think that comes up, especially with, I would say, my platform, and I think yours too, like I push reunification. I try to shine light on the fact that reunification is most often the goal for families and kids. So what happens if you don't agree?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you handle that?
So yeah, we're all human. So first of all, I always worry, right? It doesn't matter how perfect everything is. I'm always going to worry. So whenever I start to feel like things are progressing towards reunification, obviously the social workers or attorneys are saying so, and I'm a little nervous, I usually lean in more. So I try to connect even more with the family and offer my support, offer my, can I crowdsource some things for you? Or I'll go through my list of things I'm planning to pack and ask, do you need the crib? Do you need strollers? Things like that. And so I usually try to, instead of resisting and backing away and, all of that, I will try to just connect deeper with the family. And, that usually kind of shines a light of what's actually happening. And I'm more at ease. If there are, more intense feelings I always go to support group. And that's really where I can talk about things or, vent if needed. And the families and I love my support group, recommend it for everyone. The families are there to kind of be a sounding board and, recenter me and calm and all of that. So that's what I do. I would love to hear what you do too.
Yeah. So I think when I have those feelings, I think one skill set and character trait of a foster caregiver that can sometimes be overlooked is really that self-reflection and that self-awareness piece of like, I'm feeling these things, but where's it actually coming from? Like, is it a story I'm creating? Is it coming from fear that isn't warranted? So I think the times where I might have been nervous, like we had it's been a while now, but our very first foster daughter was with us for a very short time, and moved on into a family I wasn't entirely sure about. I felt like everything was being rushed. I didn't think that the transition was happening in a way that really supported, a, a healthy transition.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
and I think like in retrospect, we didn't speak up enough during that time. But I think speak with your caseworker and share what your concerns are in again, like a humble and a curious way. Like, don't come in like, I know that this isn't right, but say like, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what I'm seeing. Is there a way to make this transition more supportive for everyone involved? And sometimes even like if another question that I know that we get is like, what happens if a child doesn't want to
Yep, I got
return
that
home?
question too.
Yeah, so going into that, it's kind of something that we have experienced, and also I've had indirect experience with. And again, it depends on the age of the child,
Yeah.
the maturity, the emotional maturity as well. Really talking to them and like having therapy. Like therapy is so key for the children, for the families, and really trusting that having family therapy as they transition back home, their case team, their therapist, everyone is going to be listening to that child and supporting them and being alert to what they're sharing.
Yeah. Well,
Ultimately,
go ahead. Sorry.
well, like ultimately, I have not heard of like a child saying, I do not want to return home. This is why. And every adult saying, too bad, you're going home.
Yeah,
Like
I haven't experienced
usually
that
it's,
either. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, okay, let's talk. Let's see what's going on. Let's work through it. It's not reunification at all cost, even if the child is uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, and I was just going to add in. So usually it's not standard, at least where I am, for the child to do therapy with their bio parent. And I don't know why that isn't standard. Everyone tells me
Right.
it's too complex with confidentiality, but you can always advocate for it. I have had therapists go to visits and help do some sessions and bonding, and that can also help put the child and the parent at ease, to kind of talk about the transition, talk about what they're worried about, or, and kind of put those fears at ease. That can be helpful to get a professional to intervene in those conversations.
Yeah. So you're saying that like family therapy doesn't often happen?
Not a lot from where like the child will have therapy or, because I have little ones, we do a lot of play therapy.
Mhm.
So that's with me personally, but
Yeah.
often it is not with the bio parent
Right.
until they return home.
Interesting.
Um,
So for us, it's individual therapy, and then as there's a reunification transition timeline, it starts to move
that's
towards
great to hear.
family therapy. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean, think about it. Like you have, and I've seen this happen. It's like you have families who have been apart for so long.
Mhm.
Um, in some cases that they have to reintegrate. I mean,
Yes, yeah.
you're
Mhm.
breaking up, you're disrupting this family, and then you're throwing them back into the same home, and the kids have changed, the parents have changed.
Mhm.
How do they work?
Circumstances have changed,
So, yeah,
I
so many
had
things.
one
Yeah.
child that was so excited to return to their old room, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"That room is not gonna be there. You have a new room." Like,
Yeah, yeah,
because, kids glom onto very specific things and they're, trying
yeah,
to understand and make sense of what's happening.
yeah,
So it can be complex, but it's possible, step
yeah,
by step by step.
yeah. I also see Forever the Same Ari is in the Instagram chat. She's a primary family who I've been following for a while. Her two twins just returned home, and so if you want to share anything about what that support looked like through that transition in the chat, I'm sure people would want to hear your perspective, and we're so glad
Yeah, there's a
we can
few,
serve that.
like, primary family members that have started Instagram and TikToks, and I don't know, I always have more to learn, and I think it's such an interesting, thing for foster parents to
Yeah,
foster caregivers or whatever word you were saying,
yeah,
to consider and think
hmm,
about, you put yourself in their shoes. So,
for sure, for
I know
sure.
reunification can be scary though.
Let me
Um,
let me grab this comment from YouTube. B is asking, how did we decide which agency to go with? Even just to begin your training process,
mhm.
because she's a bit overwhelmed. And this is something that I hear about. It's like, where do you even start? Like,
Yes.
and I'll share briefly what our
Mhm.
process looked like. I literally started an Excel spreadsheet, and
Me
I
too.
had yeah. so
Yes.
basically what I did is I Googled, and I found every single possible place. I added their phone number,
Mhm.
and then I would ask questions that seemed relevant at the time. So for me at the time, it was what kind of normalcy reimbursements did the agency support? Because when you go into privatized foster care agencies, they have different structures to support the kids. So
Yeah.
when we found one that had a clothing reimbursement, so every quarter, we could take them shopping, get new clothes, and it would be reimbursed. The same with mileage reimbursement was important to us because we were,
Mm.
driving so much and so far. Some of those some of those things were really important. Some things, you have to go with recommendations from your community and other foster caregivers, talk about their experiences, and really listen to what support do they give their
Yeah.
caregivers. Um, because you can ask, what's your caseload? How many cases do you have? And like that's always going to change. So
And what does that number even mean? Like,
true. Yeah.
if it's just them managing a case, it's one thing versus if they have a whole team managing a team of, a
Yeah.
variety. Um, yeah, for me, I started the Excel sheet and mine was distanced to the agency. This was pre-COVID times where we did all of our training. And so we would have to do all the training in person. Social work support groups were also there. So I wanted to
Mhm.
make sure it was somewhere close by. And also ours has all the visits at their facility. So I found somewhere that was close by that offered support group. And then lastly, I looked for an agency that also provided mental health services.
Mhm.
So they could provide full wraparound services with, mental health and everything and case management. And that it streamlined the process a lot. And, there's also like the vibe check. Like when I
Yeah.
went, did I get a good vibe? Did I feel like I connected with the other families there? Because these
Mhm.
will be your future babysitters and
Yeah.
support,
Mhm.
system. So I had to, we kind of got to know a few families, during those intro sessions and went from there.
Yeah. And that vibe, it's like, what are their values? What are their ethics behind the organization?
That's a good point too, because some have different values for sure.
Yeah. And so, for us, like we definitely wanted to make sure that we chose an agency that supported like inclusivity and diverse representation and of thought, of people, of everything. And so that was important to us. And when we first started, we only had an option to go through a private agency, which was very unique. When you're in like a metro area, sometimes you can't go directly to the county. We now have experience with both. There are pros and cons. Usually private agencies are going to offer more like support, like having mental health within the same organization. That I hadn't even thought about how much easier that makes things when scheduling and communicating with the case team. But also like I've experienced a lot of, what is it called? Like that game of telephone and like things going wrong because there's so many people involved. And, now working directly with the county and having like the one point person who knows you and who knows the kids, like that's been a really interesting experience. And I love it.
Yeah.
So
usually I always say like an agency, if it has more support, it's also more work for you. You're going to have more visits, more phone calls, more all of that. Like the communication is not as streamlined. So it's stuff to consider. And, sort of related, if you're okay to jump a little bit, one of my followers was asking if there's like a certain personality type that makes for a good foster parent. And I love that we both like made Excel sheets. So maybe, people who aren't afraid of a spreadsheet, but I'd love your opinion if you feel like there's some type that makes for a good foster parent.
So you said what makes for a good foster parent? Like
a personality type.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I would say, oh gosh, I think like flexibility and patience is like, I didn't have either of those things like coming into it. And it was a stretch for me. And like, it's something that I've really, been working on. But I would say that patience is key. I would say kind of a even tempered, like at least one grown up or adult in the home should be able at any given time to kind of be that peaceful,
the calm,
whatever, the calm. Yeah. And there's something about, yes, you can be trained on being a trauma informed parent, but you have to have a certain level of just intrinsic empathy. Like you have to care enough about, other situations. You need to be focused out on other people. Those are kind of the things that are coming to mind that I feel like
I agree completely.
helpful.
I think just adding on, like from a more practical point is also just like not being afraid to talk to new people and not being afraid to insert yourself in situations that are uncomfortable and to be able to articulate your opinion and your thoughts clearly in kind of a high pressure situation. I mean, we have child family team meetings that we do, a couple times a year. And I was sitting in one time where there were like 20 people and, you have to be able to express your opinion or advocate in a very clear way in front of a lot of people. And I know that's hard for some people, but it definitely is a part of being a foster parent, at least in my experience.
I agree for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I have a couple teen questions, but do you want to do those or do you want to go to one of yours?
Yeah. Let me see what has come through. Yeah. Flexibility and support to manage all the logistics and the appointments. Carmen is saying in the Instagram chat, definitely important. Like there should be some flexibility, like literally in your schedule to allow for that. And then of course, like the self-awareness, the self-reflection piece.
Yes.
I love that you said the communication, having effective communication is key when you're dealing with case teams. So let me see. Looking to see. I
Okay.
love I love this one from Katie. She's like, I have no experience with fostering. She's 21 and yet she loves both of our both of our
Aw.
channels and stuff. Oh, I love that so much. Thank you. Thank you, Katie. So I would say what advice, uncertainty, Jenna, we did touch on that a little bit earlier. So when you see the replay, you'll be able to um, answer that question. Da, da, da. I'm not very good at multitasking, so
That's okay. I
you
have
gotta
my list. I can I mean, so because I don't personally foster teens, I did like call that out to my followers
yeah,
because you
yeah,
do.
go ahead
So
and
I'd
ask.
love to if you could talk through there were two kind of different questions. One was about dealing with teens, especially at nighttime with night terrors
Mm,
and how you're supporting sleep for an older kid and we're
mhm.
kind of respecting all those boundaries. I'd love to hear from you. Any tips you have?
Yeah, so I think with my experience with teens is and we take more what is called like traditional placement. So
Mhm.
I know you were mentioning like therapeutic children who might have like medical diagnoses
Yeah.
or mental
Mhm.
health concerns or something like that that require an extra level of care.
Yeah.
Our experience has more been with like traditional um, kids, and that's just because our schedules and our family makeup.
Mhm.
So I would say the experiences that we've had with teens at nighttime is really like they aren't going to vocalize. They're not going to
Mm.
vocalize that they're uncomfortable, um, that they're losing sleep, that they're stressed. You have to build that trust first. And so once you build that trust and you show them that they care, then when you ask questions like, hey, how'd you sleep? Everything okay? They might start to open up a little bit more. But my
Mhm.
experience is like they're usually like, yep, it was fine. It was
Yeah.
fine. Yep, slept fine. When in reality, they were up half of the night, worried and thinking about all the trauma that they've experienced and this disruption and all of that. Um, I think that things that you can do to kind of support that initially. I know there are a lot of opinions on technology with teens,
Yeah,
and
that
you
was
do want,
questions came through about that too.
yeah. So you want to make sure they're being safe with technology, but I would honestly error on the side of allowing them technology while they're transitioning into your home, because you don't know the friends that are going to console them, the
Mm,
family who can console them, um, feeling like they aren't alone. If you take away a kid's, a teenager's access to technology, you're taking away their community. And so, of course, within reason, like if you have a child who does not know how to be safe online,
yeah.
safety is number one. But that's how we approach things. We kind of give them space. We check in. Um, there isn't. We haven't experienced like with the older kids a whole lot of like nighttime issues other than like they stay up too late
Yeah.
and I mean that's a teen like
Do you put
you
limits on screen time? Like, are I hear of some families like cutting the internet at a certain time. Do you do stuff like
yeah
that?
no
Okay.
we're very I mean some yeah people have their opinions on it.
Yeah.
Again, you have to adjust to the child and to their circumstances, but we err on the side of like letting them have access until it becomes a problem, and then we'll
Mhm.
have a conversation about it.
And
But
I like the point, like, you don't wanna cut off their lifelines. You're a stranger. You're not gonna be able to help
yeah,
console them.
yeah,
That's what a lot of times their friends or boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever it is
yeah.
might be able to do better.
And that's another a point with this is like when you are getting an older child, especially if they're coming with a cell phone, like
Mm,
that definitely happens. Like they already have a cell phone with their family, and the caseworker may or may not take it away, depending on the situation. But I would have that conversation with the caseworker that night. Is communication with mom,
yeah.
dad, aunt, uncle, grandma, is that okay? Like have that conversation up front. If they don't have access to a phone, like get that contact information or provide yours. People will get like a Google number so that the family doesn't have their direct number. I've never had an issue with this. We give out our number. It's never been an issue. But that way, like those first few nights, like when it's winding down, you can ask them, you know, hey, do you want to use my phone? Do you want to log into Facebook and send a message? Do you, you know, who can support you? Because you're the stranger, and don't expect them to come to you and feel any better. I mean, that's just kind
So
of the
comfortable.
reality.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and you bring up an interesting point too, because I know even with little ones, it can take many weeks, even months, for a child to really feel kind of more calm in your home. How long
Mhm.
does it usually take for the kids you foster? Like, are you seeing the same thing? It can take months even.
No.
That's
I
good.
think with like, yeah, with the older kids, again,
Well, you have
we
a
have,
different communication piece too.
yeah, I guess for us, I would say sometimes it's instantaneous. Like they'll
Mhm.
open up, they'll talk to you. It's all about like the way that you're presenting yourself, you know, which goes back to those like characteristics. You know, I think I'm going to give myself a little bit of credit. Like I try to create a safe space to
Yeah.
where they feel comfortable talking about those things. And so the first car ride, they get dropped off and we're like, "Hey, let's go to the store. Let's pick out your favorite foods. Let's,
Mhm.
grab anything that you need." And on that car ride is like, ask them questions, see if they're
Yeah.
ready to open up. Um, all of the kids we've had are pretty open right away. It's those bigger things. It takes a couple of weeks for them to start opening up to you for the deeper things,
Yes.
to feel
Yes.
to,
That always takes time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, totally. And with little ones, because usually we've had visits right from the beginning, it can be so confusing for
yeah,
them to like see their mom come back to us. And it's like this
yeah,
constant back and forth. And, when you can't communicate in the same ways or explain what's going on, it can take a while for those things to kind of, mellow out a little and get
yeah.
into a rhythm.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why, what I've found is that, different areas have different ages that
Hmm.
need placement more than others. And like, so in
Yeah.
our area, we speak loudly about fostering teens and older kids because many of our foster caregivers and licensed to foster or adopt, they want the young kids, they want the babies, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And the need is greater for the older kids. But
Hmm.
then what I've also heard and seen is that there are other areas where there's a desperate need for people who want to take in babies.
Hmm.
And for me, it's like, I can't do that. Like
Yeah.
I cannot take in younger kids right now. We already have two in the house that,
Yeah, you have 2 little ones, yeah.
yeah, like I can't handle that. And honestly, like I commend, like you taking in the kids who are dealing with these complex situations that they can't understand. Like
Mhm.
the older kids, you can kind of talk through what's happening, what's next. Um, so I
Yeah,
do not
we do a
envy you,
lot
and
of
I
play. I mean,
yeah,
it's complex with every age. That's why we sort of have focused in on specific ages because it's allowed us to really get the skills
yeah,
and, understand what to do. One of the questions that had come in from me was about like maximizing the benefits of play therapy
mhm,
for toddlers and all that. And, I always recommend play therapy is a great way to kind of connect and then play about sort of the things that are happening around them or maybe did happen. I mean, I have found huge success with play therapy and highly recommend it. And then you can continue if you feel comfortable and regulated, you can continue some of that play even in your home. I mean, I've purchased doll houses and different types of toys related to certain situations and
mhm.
we play about it here and kind of let them lead.
I
So
like
it
that.
really it just varies by age group for sure.
Yeah. let me grab
Yep, go
let me
ahead.
grab this one really quick. So Heather is asking, I'm only 17, but I've wanted to foster since she was 12. Did you always know you wanted to be a foster parent, and how did the conversations go with your partner? So yeah, this is something that I've definitely talked about on the channel before. Um, for me, I grew up and a close family to us was a foster family. And
Mm.
like, honestly, I just loved the family dynamic. It was so open and accepting and like had this big family vibe. And like, from a selfish perspective, like I just wanted that kind of a family. Like I wanted to create a family that was accepting and, you could come and go as you please, like, because I mean, they would have kids who were placed with them, and then, they would go off to either family or some other permanency option. And then they'd be coming back. So I always knew it was how I envisioned my family being. And my conversation with my partner is just like, this is important to me. Like, would you be open to that?
Mm-hmm.
And, luckily he was, and it was, near and dear to his heart too. And so we just went from there. So it was pretty easy for me. How did that go? Are you okay talking about that?
Yeah. No, that's fine. So I was a teenager as well. I saw a TV show, Home for the Holidays, which is something that Dave Thomas Foundation puts on every year. And it just showcases, that one specifically is about adopting from foster care. But that's where, hold on, my husband is making lots of noise.
He knew we were talking about him.
Yeah.
Or that we were about to.
And he has his earpods in, so he can't even hear me. Chris.
Quiet, something really important is happening.
Yeah. So I watched the show, and that's where I learned about foster care. So I was asking my dad, like, what is foster care? And it just wasn't something that had come up in my family, and not, something we had talked about. And it kind of always stuck with me and was like very alarming. And I was very worried and concerned. And it was something that I decided very early on that I wanted to participate in and help. And every relationship, every guy I dated, I was always like, I want to be a foster parent. How do you feel about that? So it's something we talked about very from the beginning. And with Chris, it's very similar. He was like, okay, that's probably fine. I don't know much about it, but like, let's learn about it together. And so it's always like very much a conversation. And we moved to our now house kind of, we had talked before we moved, like, all right, when we move, now we're going to start getting licensed. And so that's sort of, again, it was always a conversation, and whenever really rushed, but top of mind in our plans.
Yeah.
And so we picked out a home where we could foster and, in a nice school district or a community. So that's how we did it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. And yeah, like, I think like with us using our platforms to talk about this, like, we're reaching people, and, there's a lot of people who are young, who are hearing our stories, who are learning more. And I think it's like, it's, I guess maybe we're creating like this next generation of like, people who are like at a young age, like, oh, this is something I'd really like to support.
But I also, but think with social media, like, we're seeing more stories from more kids, and we're hearing about these experiences more openly. Former foster youth are speaking out and sharing their experiences. And so I just think that the next generation of foster parents are going to be so much more educated and equipped and ready than, like I said, I watched like a TV show about it.
Right.
So
very limited. Yeah. Very. And that's why, like, we like to share and help spread the message, because like there wasn't a whole lot. Like, even me 3 or 4 years ago when we were starting, it was hard to really understand what actually it's going to be like.
Yeah.
And so,
And one of the questions that had come in was about Casa. So I've definitely talked about that too, as an option to, support foster youth, is to become a Casa, which is a court-appointed special advocate. And I personally have never worked with one. I wanted to ask you, have you ever had a Casa with your kids?
And I have a question too. It says, what do you wish more Casas would do? I think Meredith asked me this on my Instagram
I had a similar
story.
question on mine too.
Yeah. So I think my experience with Casas are basically non-existent. I think our very first placement, who only stayed with us for 7 weeks, she had a Casa, and during that time, I think she communicated like once. And again, these are court-appointed special advocates.
Yeah, it's a volunteer position. You're not paid.
Yeah, and so I would say, and every other child after that never got a Casa. And so I think for my area, there are just not enough of them. And so what I would say is, what do I wish more Casas would do? I would say, like, we need more Casas. Like, that's really what we need. And this is a great opportunity for, people who aren't ready to like take the leap into fostering, but wanted, or, maybe it's just not for them, but they still want to see like what they can do to
or if
support.
their partner is not interested, but you are. That is a way that you can still very much participate in a young person's life in a meaningful way. We've just we've never had a child have one. And then, I've never requested one because I've been able to attend court and talk to attorneys. And like, I felt like the team was all very educated on what's going on. And so, to the families I work with, I always recommend requesting one if you feel like there's definitely a disconnect, or you feel like the child's voice is not being heard appropriately. A good Casa can take the child's wishes and present it to the judge in a meaningful way. And so,
Yeah. And Lily on Instagram had said that her son's Casa has been the best thing for them. They've been a part of his life for a very long time. And I think maybe Casas, this is just like a hypothesis, I guess, a total guess here. Maybe they're intended more for the younger kids who can't speak in court or can't voice things. And so maybe because we have older children who they get heard more often.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really dependent. Sadly, the advocacy, and this is something I've talked about on my page, is like very hit or miss across the country. And it's really disappointing to hear about so many kids that are not being represented and heard in court. It's just something that's like, I grew up with attorneys. My dad and stepdad were both attorneys. So I'm always thinking about like, who is representing the kids?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Who's speaking for them?
And I just want to showcase this. Tina, she said she just started as a GAL, which is a guardian ad litem, and she's a certified parent as of 2 weeks ago. So congrats, Tina.
I don't know. Some of you guys out there are doing so much. I'm like always impressed.
Oh, me too.
At the advocacy. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to take another question from yours or from mine?
Yeah, let me grab this one. So this was really important. How would you respond to a trans or non-binary child? What would you do to make them feel accepted in your home? So this is something I actually just got a comment on a video I posted a long time ago. Like, even in our bathroom upstairs, I have like really cool superhero decals, and it's like Batman and Wonder Woman. And somebody commented, like, if you have a non-binary child, like, consider taking that down. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think that that would have been something that might have made them feel uncomfortable. So I think this is an area we as a family are always trying to learn more about. I know when we were with a private agency, we specifically got a like request that said, like, are you LGBTQ, all the things, like, are you an ally? And, all of their families would either say yes or no. And so in retrospect, I'm like, wow, the fact that some families might say no, which good for them if they know their limits and like they are not gonna be okay with it. But for us, I think that is something that we would absolutely support. It adds additional challenges, especially when it comes to children who identify as trans, because there's medical choices, and with those medical choices, you can't, as a foster parent, necessarily
we don't have medical authority.
Yeah. And the child can't. So it's like an added element of like caseworkers and the primary family. So for us, I always want to make sure people know, like, we're very, very inclusive when it comes to the kids.
And same here as well. I mean, we foster littler ones, so it doesn't come up in calls, placement calls and things like that as often, but I try, we try our best. And I have a whole highlight on my page, on my Instagram, for tips and like practical things you can put into practice today to show that you are accepting to all kids in your home.
Yeah.
And it's almost Pride Month, so we'll be talking about it more.
Yeah.
Sure,
Oh, yay. I will say an interesting thing, like, so when you have older teens, like this comes up, like not gender identification, but sexual orientation. And it's interesting because, if you build that trust, the kids will talk to you about how they're feeling in that area and like, how they identify. And so sometimes you have to kind of navigate like the parents not supporting, but you supporting, and, try to help build that connection and build that conversation between the child and the parent. Because, ultimately, if they return home, you want to make sure like they're all on the same page. So that's been interesting too.
Always loop in professionals. I always feel like that's, helpful, and listening to former foster youth and their experiences. If you're a little lost, I know there's support groups online for foster parents who are fostering LGBTQ youth. So if you ever need resources, definitely check in with me and I can send those your way. One question that I had on mine is from a veteran. He or she calls themselves a veteran foster parent who's feeling disheartened by the system. Do you have any words of encouragement?
Yeah. And that's hard, because the people who've been doing this for so long, it can get really frustrating. And I think it's understandable to start feeling disheartened and discouraged and like you're not making the impact that you wanted to make when you first started out. And I would say in those times, I think it's absolutely understandable to take a break. Take a break, recharge, reconnect with why you are a foster parent, like why you continue to do this. I would definitely suggest like focusing on yourself, going to therapy. Like you might be experiencing secondhand, what is it? Secondary
trauma.
Yeah, secondary trauma, which can break you down, and you might not even know it. And so, taking care of those things, and then honestly, just like remember, it's easy to focus on the negatives. Like we, sometimes it's our default. It's like, oh, what's not working? What's not working? But really taking inventory and making a list of all the kids and families and people that you've inspired to do what you're doing. And like if my aunt and uncle weren't a foster family, like I wouldn't be a foster family. I don't think it would even be on my radar. And like I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So like there's a chain reaction, and focus on those positive things, focus on what's in your control. And, hopefully after that break, you can jump right back in.
No, we take breaks here too. I usually, in between kids, I'll usually plan like a little weekend getaway, and try to reset a little. Another thing you can do is, connect with new foster parents. Sometimes, I don't know, I get a lot of joy in helping others. And, there's a lot of enthusiasm at the beginning, which is really good. I'm still enthusiastic, but it's kind of refreshing to see things from the beginning, and helping others and teaching others, at least for me, has been very fulfilling and recenters kind of what I'm doing. And, it helps ease the frustrations in my own home, the stuff that we deal with.
Oh, for sure.
But breaks are totally normal. I mean, when you talk to most foster parents, they're not doing it for decades. I mean, it's not something people do forever and ever, or they come back to it later. So it's totally normal. And we all feel that way at times, at least the families I've worked with and myself, sometimes need to like step away and reset.
Yeah. I mean, we came off of, we're coming up on a year from a very nasty disruption and an experience with the county that literally made me lose faith in the entire system. And to see the way that county conducted themselves, like all we could do is really just walk away and like reassess, how do we, where do we fit in? Like, how do we keep fostering, and realign ourselves with, a county, an agency, like whatever it is, basically reassess, reconfigure, and now we're back, and we needed time as a family to like heal. I've been really open about how that put me into a very, very bad depression for a period of time, and me experiencing that, I would have not have been a good foster caregiver during that time. So really, you have to heal yourself before you can focus out on others.
Yep. Yes.
Oh, and Mary or
go ahead.
Marianne, this is the person who is helping and supporting and working with me to launch my website next week.
Oh,
it's
fun.
We are creating something really exciting. But she says, know when it's time to change agencies or counties too, because
that's a good point.
Your agencies, and even in your county, there's a lot of turnover, especially in leadership. So you might have selected one because you aligned with them, and now you're finding out that, a couple of years go by, the support is not there like it used to be, the values don't align. So really kind of look at, do you just really need a different like home base?
And so that's something people don't realize. You can change agencies, you can move to county. When you have kids in your home, it's a little tricky, and you need to be like very aware of what you're doing before you start the process. Because sometimes they will not allow you to keep the kids in your home if you are changing agencies, which is like, in my opinion, really horrific. But welcome to foster care. So always like make sure it's kind of an in-between time, and make sure you understand exactly what will happen once you start the process of like porting your license to another agency or to county. But that's a good point. You can change it up, and you'll meet new families. You'll kind of get different support, and that can always be really helpful. Okay, so I do have to go in about 5 minutes. So just a few more questions. I'm looking at my list as well.
And I will say, I want to let everyone know, like if you're watching on YouTube, do you want to talk about what your channel?
Sure, I can talk about what I offer. So I am on YouTube too. It's new, so it's like not very exciting over there. But if you could subscribe, that would be great. Over on my YouTube, Foster Parent Partner, I think is what it is. I don't know how it all works.
Is it in your link tree? Like, do you have a link tree?
It's in my link tree. Yep. But I'm on Instagram and TikTok, but I also have a Patreon. I've made it very affordable. It's as little as $1 a month. And that's where I'm able to provide one-on-one support, DMs, can get you content just for what you're specifically dealing with. And then of course on my channels, I create videos that in my opinion, are really silly and uncomfortable to make, but people like them. So I keep going, but I do like little reenactments. If
like
you haven't seen them,
it's like scenario based. They're really helpful for people. Like people like love these. Like
thank you.
You're like acting as if you're having these like conversations, and you're doing it in a way that's like there's no kids involved. There's
there's no kids, but I'm taking kind of inspiration of something I maybe messed up myself in the past. Or, I've been working with another family on a specific issue. So I'll create these like little videos. So that's what you'll find from me throughout the internet for what I create. And then Whitney, do you want to share kind of what you do?
Yeah. So, I mean, gosh, I feel like I'm trying to like reinvent myself a little bit, but on our YouTube, there's half and half. So like I'll talk about specific topics and situations as a foster caregiver. Sometimes I'm just speaking, like recently I posted a whole video talking about what normalcy is, why it's important as a foster caregiver to support it with the children placed with you. and ways that you can do it, why it's important, that sort of thing. And then also just kind of like vlog style, like what our family is doing. So
I
this
love
week,
that.
yeah, this week we were able to share and anything that's foster related with like our own experience is being reviewed by our county. So I talk to them before I want to share something and I figure out what's appropriate. So we were able to say like there's potential that we're going to have 2 new kids placed
Wow.
in our home, and one of them I can say is our previous foster daughter. We call her Miss A to keep her identity, private. But she's staying for the summer, so we have like really exciting
That's
things
so great.
happening.
I'm glad you're able to provide that support.
Yeah, and then we're also like in the process of within the next few weeks we may have a placement, and so can't say anything more about that. But yeah, so I like to share those things on TikTok. I mostly do like the trends, and I don't know what I'm doing over there, but it's a lot of fun. So I do that, and then Instagram, like I'm hit or miss. So, but follow me if you want to follow along the journey.
Do you want to close with like one piece of advice that you wish you knew before you started or at the beginning? Maybe we can each share something and then we can wrap up.
Yeah. I know you got to go in a couple minutes. So I think what I've learned, what I wish I would have known. I think number one, really starting off with building a relationship with the primary family. I think that if you start off up front and they see that you can be support to them, that you're not trying to get in between them and their children. I would have liked to know how to navigate those situations better. And not come from a place of judgment, and have more empathy for primary families. And then also, I mean, like I said, like one of the first things that we bought was, when we were fostering, we bought different things, and like I was worried about a teen placement coming in and like hurting our kid.
Sure.
And it's like those kinds of stigmas that we believed up front. I wish that wouldn't have been the case. I wish we would have come in and like been aware enough to and educated enough to know that those weren't something that I mean, sometimes you do. There are behaviors with kids because they're trauma behaviors, they're triggered. That could happen, but most often it's not going to happen. So that's kind of what
I would echo. I was a little hesitant at the beginning as well, and probably had a few missteps in relation to the primary families. So that, and then also I personally did not spend enough time listening to former foster youth at the beginning. It was not something my agency talked a lot about. They didn't have former kids in care come to a training. So it was a huge miss in my perspective. I wish I had spent a little bit more time understanding more lived experiences before I, opened my home. So I've had to learn a lot of things as I go and catch up in the learnings, but I wish I had spent more time understanding that perspective. But live and learn.
I love that. So if you're watching on Instagram, if you're watching on YouTube, follow along with both of us, learn from our mistakes so that as you move
we always
forward,
learn, still making mistakes, right?
Yeah.
It's always growing.
Exactly. But it's been so great to have you on the channel. I'm going to put your YouTube link and maybe even like your full link tree in the description for the playback.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I'm going to repost this replay. So if you missed the beginning, we have covered a ton. So thank you so much. And we'll do this again sometime.
I think that would be great. Yeah.
Always
we'll make it a regular thing.
I like it.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.